When my older sister Madison Ye suddenly changed her mind and said she no longer needed me to marry Lucas Johnson in her place, a man who was paralyzed, I immediately understood. She, like me, had been reborn. In our previous life, Madison's fiancé Lucas was left half paralyzed after an accident during a mission. When she got the news, she flatly refused to marry him and wouldn't hear another word about it. Our parents, who had always favored Madison, forced me to take her place and marry Lucas instead. After I married him, it took me less than 6 months to cure Lucas's paralysis. Once he recovered, with his health restored and his military career taking off, Madison, who had been secretly involved with a thug and had gotten pregnant, became resentful. She left behind a suicide note accusing me of stealing her engagement, then jumped into a river and killed herself. After Madison died, Lucas didn't act any differently than usual. But when I was 8 months pregnant, he cruelly pushed me into the river. It turned out Madison's suicide note had accused me of manipulating her and stealing Lucas from her. As I struggled in the freezing water, Lucas looked at me coldly and said, "This is all your fault. If you hadn't schemed to break Madison and me apart, she wouldn't have died. You brought this on yourself." I couldn't swim, and my baby and I died tragically in that icy river. When I opened my eyes again, I heard a voice that was all too familiar. "I want to marry Lucas Johnson. Right now. But I have a condition. I want the box of Grandpa's miracle pills that my sister has." That familiar voice made me turn my head. I saw Madison Yee standing next to Lucas, who was once again sitting in a wheelchair looking determined, as if she wouldn't take no for an answer. "Sister, I know the pills Grandpa left can heal Lucas's legs. Please, I'm begging you, give them to me. If he takes them, he'll be able to walk again." I stared blankly at Madison, alive and well. Then I looked at Lucas, whose legs were still paralyzed. What was happening? Wasn't Madison already dead? How was I looking at a version of her that was several years younger? And Lucas, hadn't I already cured him? Why was he still sitting in a wheelchair? Then I turned and saw our parents. Younger and wearing unfriendly expressions, and recognized every familiar item in the room. In that moment, I realized something terrifying. I had been reborn. I had returned to the moment before I was forced to marry Lucas in Madison's place. In the previous life, when Lucas was injured and became paralyzed during a mission, Madison, his fiancée, immediately regretted the engagement. She absolutely refused to marry a disabled man. Our parents had always adored Madison for her wit and eloquence, so when she refused, they turned to me, the daughter they never cared for, to take her place. Lucas, dumped by the woman he loved, became aggressive and hostile. He refused to take his medicine or cooperate with treatment, and was completely resigned to dying. So on the first day of our marriage, when I saw the miserable state he was in, I told him outright that I had a box of miracle pills left behind by my grandfather that could heal him. I told him that if he took them for 81 days, his legs would recover completely. Lucas didn't fully believe me, but he had no choice. A paralyzed soldier who couldn't walk was bound to be discharged. And my late grandfather had indeed been a renowned healer. So, with suspicion in his heart, Lucas began taking the pills I gave him every day. Before long, the 81 days were over, and Lucas's paralyzed legs could stand again. The dramatic transformation left him stunned and overjoyed. From that day on, he listened to everything I said. A few months later, Lucas was able to stand fully on his own. With his health restored, he returned to the military and rose quickly through the ranks, becoming more and more successful. Seeing Lucas healthy and thriving, Madison regretted her decision. She came to me, asking me to divorce him so she could marry him again. I refused. I was already pregnant. When she realized she couldn't talk me into it, she tried to win Lucas back directly. She visited him repeatedly, using any excuse. Lucas's attitude toward her seemed lukewarm, and I thought he hated her for abandoning him when he needed her most. I had no idea that he didn't truly hate Madison. The power of a first love can magnify a man's worst instincts, his ingratitude, disloyalty, and selfishness. Lucas was torn between choosing Madison and staying with me, the woman who had given him back his legs. It was a painful struggle for him. Then, a few days later, someone delivered a letter to Lucas in Madison's name. The letter was a dramatic and emotional condemnation of me. Madison claimed that I had used Grandpa's miracle pills to blackmail her and force her away from Lucas. She wrote that I had plotted to ruin her, setting her up with thugs and deliberately getting her pregnant. She said I had wanted her dead. Right now, Lucas had no other way out. Death was his only option. After reading Madison's letter, he immediately left the house and rushed to the river where she had supposedly taken her life. But by the time he arrived, all he found was Madison's pale, bloated corpse floating in the water. From that day on, Lucas's attitude toward me began to shift. I could feel the change. But my conscience was clear. After all, it was Madison who had chosen to walk away from him. She had never truly loved him. She was two-timing him the whole time, secretly seeing a slick-talking thug on the side. Back when Lucas was healthy, Madison had her eyes on his future promotions and wanted to have it both ways. But the moment he became disabled, she didn't hesitate to break off the engagement and let me take her place while she ran off with that lowlife. If Lucas had cared enough to look into it back then, he would have seen right through her. Her so-called suicide was just an act. She just happened to be unlucky. The ground beneath her gave way, and she accidentally fell into the river and died. What I underestimated was how deeply Lucas had cared for Madison. What I never expected was how far he would go in his madness. When I was 8 months pregnant, Lucas suddenly acted out of character and offered to take me for a walk. I didn't suspect a thing. He led me to the same river where Madison had died. There was no one around. Then, without warning, he shoved me into the water. As I struggled helplessly, he stood on the shore and watched, his voice filled with hatred. "This is your punishment. Madison, you knew the one I loved was her, and you still schemed to tear us apart just for wealth and status. You set her up to be humiliated by that thug. A venomous woman like you doesn't deserve to live." I tried to speak, to explain, but he wouldn't listen. The river poured into my mouth and nose. I drowned in that icy winter night, me and the child in my belly, both lost forever. The agony of drowning, of dying with my baby, made me burn with hatred. I wanted nothing more than to rip Lucas Johnson apart, this cruel, heartless, ungrateful monster. As I stirred slightly in the present, still in shock from the memories, Lucas, still in his wheelchair, coldly cut in. "Madeline, I don't like you. Not even a little. Don't think you can use some miracle pills to force me to marry you. I'd rather stay paralyzed for life than ever give in to you. Give it up." As soon as those words left his mouth, Madison dropped to her knees in front of me with a loud thud. "Madeline, I'm begging you. As your sister, I'm begging you. Please give me Grandpa's pills. If they can help Lucas walk again, I'll do anything for you. I'll serve you for the rest of my life." Looking at the two shameless people in front of me, both begging for the miracle pills, I was absolutely certain they had been reborn too. These two scumbags had returned to this life just like I had, and they were convinced I still had the pills that could cure Lucas. What they didn't know was that those so-called miracle pills never existed. In the previous life, the doctors had already declared that Lucas's condition was incurable. He was expected to remain disabled for the rest of his life. But I was well-versed in medicine, and I wanted to help him. Lucas, however, believed he was beyond saving. After Madison dumped him, he completely lost hope and refused to cooperate with treatment. So, to get him to accept help, I told him a well-meaning lie. I said Grandpa had left behind a box of miracle pills that could cure him. In reality, the pills Lucas took for 81 days were ones I made myself. Just honey-coated herbal sleep aids. Lucas had always believed that it was the pills that restored his legs. He had no idea that the pills had absolutely nothing to do with it. Every night after he took the sleeping pills and fell into a deep sleep, I would take out my silver needles and perform acupuncture on him, following the techniques Grandpa had passed down to me. For hours each night, I worked on his blocked meridians, treating him silently while he slept. After each acupuncture session, I would give him massages, stimulating the pressure points one by one. The reason Lucas could walk again wasn't because of any miracle cure. It was my exceptional acupuncture and massage techniques. The pills were nothing more than a cover. Now both Madison and Lucas were staring at me, waiting for my response. Madison, especially, grabbed my wrist tightly, her fingernails digging painfully into my flesh. "Madeline, you're not gonna say no to your sister, right? We're family. Our bond is in our blood. If you help me, I'll be grateful for the rest of my life." Seeing Madison, their precious oldest daughter, kneeling in front of me begging for pills that didn't even exist, my biased parents immediately jumped to her defense. They couldn't stand to see her suffer. My mom glared at me and snapped, "Madeline, you have Grandpa's pills. Why won't you give them to your sister to help Lucas? What is wrong with you?" My dad pointed a trembling finger at me, his face red with fury. "You shameless brat. Hand over those pills to your sister right now. Don't you care if Lucas lives or dies?" I looked at my parents' cold, unfeeling faces and asked, slowly and clearly, "Do you seriously think Grandpa left me any miracle pills? Don't you remember? Grandpa died in an accident on his way to treat a patient. I never even got the chance to see Grandpa one last time. How could he possibly have left me any kind of miracle cure? And let's not forget, after his death, my parents tore through his house from top to bottom. Anything with even a hint of value, they took for themselves. When I left, all I had was a black cloth pouch. Inside, aside from a few of Grandpa's handwritten notes, there was nothing else." My direct question made my parents exchange a quick glance. Deep down, they both knew perfectly well there had never been any miracle medicine. But then they turned to Madison and Lucas. "Are you sure about this miracle pill?" my dad asked hesitantly. "No doubt about it. I'm certain there is one," Lucas replied without hesitation. Madison had never actually seen the so-called miracle pills I used to treat Lucas, but she knew full well that in our past life, he had gone from paralyzed to fully recovered. That alone was proof enough for her. "Maybe she's hiding them," Madison said. "Madeline's always been sneaky and manipulative. Of course she wouldn't tell you about something so important." Hearing both Madison and Lucas speak with such certainty, my parents immediately turned on me again, demanding I hand over the life-saving pills. "If you don't give them up, don't blame us for being ruthless," they threatened. After living 2 lifetimes, I was all too familiar with how cold and heartless my parents were toward me. My voice was like ice as I asked, word by word, "What are you planning to do to your own daughter?" "If you don't listen, we'll beat you to death," my mother snapped. "And if that doesn't work, we'll marry you off to that old widower in town." In my last life, when I refused to marry Lucas in Madison's place, they'd treated me the same way, beating me, cursing me, and threatening to send me off to marry that old man. To them, Madison was their precious jewel, while I, raised by Grandpa, was worth less than a dog in their eyes. Since they had no love for me, I no longer felt any sense of family loyalty toward them either. This time, I would get justice. I would make sure Lucas Johnson, that despicable man, and Madison Ye, that shameless woman, paid for everything they had done. I yanked my arm away from Madison's grip, her nails having dug deep into my skin. My gaze shifted to Lucas, so determined to pretend he didn't want the pills, yet clearly staring at me like a starving man. I sneered. "Didn't you say you'd rather die than take my pills, Captain Johnson? I thought you were a hero. So in honor of your great nobility, I won't be handing them over. I hope you'll stay true to your word and spend the rest of your life happily ever after with my sister." As soon as I finished speaking, I caught a flicker of panic on Lucas's face. He realized I wouldn't give him the pills, and that meant he'd never walk again. He didn't want to stay crippled. In our past life, his recovery had brought him a soaring military career, 3 promotions in no time. Now that hope was slipping through his fingers. And it wasn't just Lucas who was upset. Madison, that greedy, vain, heartless woman, my own sister, was furious too. I knew full well that at this point in time, she was still hot and heavy with that street thug. Deep down, she didn't want to marry Lucas, especially not a cripple. The only reason she insisted this time was because she'd been reborn too. She knew Lucas would recover and rise through the ranks. That's the only future she wanted. Madison burst into tears, crying and screaming that I was evil and despicable, that I couldn't stand to see her happy. I watched her performance with complete indifference. Not the slightest ripple of emotion on my face. When they saw I wasn't giving in, Lucas finally couldn't stay silent. Still in his wheelchair, he actually had the nerve to assume I was in love with him. Madeline, the real reason you won't give up the pills is because you still have feelings for me, isn't it? He said, arrogantly. Let me make it clear. I'd rather stay paralyzed for life than ever leave Madison. I'd rather die than marry you. I gave him a cold laugh. You really think too highly of yourself. You're just a half-paralyzed cripple. What makes you think I'd want to marry someone like you? In my last life, I was always careful not to hurt Lucas's pride. I tiptoed around him, never speaking harshly. But now, hearing me call him a cripple to his face, Lucas was completely stunned. He stared at me, disbelief written all over him. I met his gaze with nothing but disgust. Panic spread across his face. He wanted to walk again so badly. Now that I refused to hand over the pills, he had to find another way. Lucas turned to my parents and suggested, "This house isn't that big. If those pills are so important, she's definitely keeping them in her room somewhere." My parents and Madison instantly understood the hint. The three of them exchanged a glance and sprang into action. If I wouldn't give the pills willingly, they'd just take them by force. Lucas couldn't help physically, so Madison and my parents took over. They stormed into my room and tore it apart, pillows, drawers, cabinets, even pulling up floorboards like they were digging for treasure. They spent 5 or 6 frantic hours searching every inch of the place. In the end, they found nothing. Not a trace of the so-called miracle pills. The 4 of them stood there, dumbfounded, completely at a loss. How could Lucas Johnson possibly recover now? My biased parents, completely heartbroken for Madison, were furious and humiliated. They turned on me again, shouting, "Are you going to hand over the pills or not? If you keep this up, don't blame us if we beat you to death." Lucas joined in, threatening me too. "Madeline, if you give us the pills willingly, I promise no one will hurt you. But if you keep being stubborn and your parents take action, I won't stop them." Getting beaten in this house was nothing new to me. In my past life, every time they hit me, I would quietly endure it. I internalized the pain, thinking it was my fault, that I must have done something wrong for my parents not to love me. But after dying once, I now knew the truth. Their hatred for me had nothing to do with me. It was simply favoritism. In their eyes, there was only Madison. I didn't exist. My eyes moved slowly from my parents to Lucas, this ungrateful, shameless scum of a man. I looked him dead in the eye and said, word by word, "If they lay even a finger on me, the pills will be destroyed. And Lucas Johnson will never walk again." Lucas backed off. After tearing apart my room and finding nothing, he knew he had no leverage. He didn't dare push me too far. If I got angry and decided to never give up the pills, all his dreams of recovery would be gone. Left with no other option, Lucas, Madison, and my biased parents left in frustration to go discuss their next move. What they didn't realize was that no matter how long they planned, they would never find pills that didn't exist. I sat alone in my ransacked room, quietly planning my next steps. In my past life, they had forced me, slandered me, and hurt me mercilessly. This time, I would never let it slide. I would make every last one of them pay. Lucas wouldn't give up on the pills. I knew that. So I decided I'd give him something else entirely, a specially prepared box of medicine that would leave him impotent for life. Over the next week, whenever I had free time, I stayed in my room studying Grandpa's old notes. Meanwhile, Lucas kept showing up at our house, meeting with Madison to figure out their next move. I knew they wouldn't give up. Lucas was obsessed with walking again and regaining his success. Madison wanted to become a general's wife and live a life of luxury. They wouldn't stop coming after me. And sure enough, one night, while I was walking home alone from my night shift, 3 or 4 thugs suddenly appeared and blocked my path. They closed in around me with sleazy smiles, cutting off any escape. The one in front held a knife. "Hand over the miracle pills," he said. "We'll let you go if you cooperate. Otherwise, we'll have our fun with you before we kill you." As he spoke, he reached out to grab me. But the moment his hand touched mine, he let out a scream of pain. I had stabbed one of his pressure points with a silver acupuncture needle hidden in my sleeve. He grimaced in agony. I took the chance to break through the circle and bolted down the alley. The wounded thug screamed after me, "What are you waiting for? Don't let her get away." Footsteps pounded behind me. I ran for my life, shouting for help, desperate for someone, anyone, to hear me. Just as I burst out of the alley, a military jeep pulled up. It screeched to a stop as the driver saw me. I was saved. The men in the jeep, all military police, jumped out and quickly apprehended the thugs. The man who saved me was none other than General Chase Atwood, the youngest major general in the military district. He was a legend, an 18-year-old recruit who had racked up achievement after achievement and became a major general before he even turned 30. But just like Lucas in the past, he had injured his leg during a mission and had to use a wheelchair. In my previous life, this promising hero had died young in a rainy night car accident on his way to a meeting. He wasn't even 30. And today was the day it had happened. I wanted to see if I could change his fate with the second chance I'd been given. Chase had saved me. His guards quickly rounded up the thugs. Because of what had just happened, Chase didn't follow his original route to the meeting. Instead, he took me and the thugs straight to the police station. At the police station, the thugs were interrogated and quickly confessed. They didn't name the person behind the attack. Instead, they claimed that someone in their family was seriously ill and that they had heard I had miracle pills that could cure any disease. They said they just wanted me to hand over the medicine to save a life. Seated in his wheelchair, Chase Atwood gave a cold, sarcastic chuckle. The thugs, visibly nervous under his gaze, still insisted, "We're telling the truth. Madeline really does have miracle pills. Her grandfather was a famous healer. He left behind medicine that can cure anything, absolutely anything." Chase turned to me. "Is that true?" I met his eyes calmly and didn't flinch. "I don't have any miracle pills that can cure everything, but my grandfather passed on his medical skills to me. If it's your leg, I might be able to take a look." Chase raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. "You?" "I can try," I said steadily. "At least let me try. Sometimes a dying horse can still be saved. Maybe I can help with your leg." "You're comparing me to a horse now?" he said, mildly amused. "Of course not. I just want to offer you a chance. Let me treat you." Honestly, Chase's gaze was so sharp it made my heart race. I was scared, but I still pushed forward and offered to treat his leg. Not because I was fully confident, but because I remembered how I had helped Lucas walk again in my past life. Maybe I could do the same for Chase. He was a true military hero, completely different from someone despicable like Lucas Johnson. I sincerely wanted to see him stand again. After dropping me off at home, Chase finally spoke. "People say young calves aren't afraid of tigers. You're one bold calf. I'll give you a chance. 1 week from now, I'll come pick you up." News of the thug's arrest reached Lucas quickly. He hadn't expected things to fall apart so fast. When he heard I'd been rescued by Chase Atwood, he couldn't sit still. In our last life, by this point, I had already married Lucas and begun treating him with the so-called miracle pills. But this time, he still hadn't received any treatment, and it was driving him insane. And now that he knew I had been saved by Chase, his anxiety only grew. Chase was better than him in every possible way. Lucas was terrified that I might decide to help Chase recover instead. If I gave the miracle pills to Chase, his future would be over. Desperate to walk again, desperate to reclaim his promising career, Lucas came to me himself. "Madeline," he said, "if you give me the pills to fix my legs, I'll marry you." I couldn't help but laugh. Why would I want that? Look at yourself, half a man, half a ghost, and you still think you're some kind of prize? Why would I marry someone like you when I could have a perfectly healthy man? "You're in love with me, aren't you?" he said smugly. I spat on the ground. "Don't say things that'll get you struck by lightning. You're Madison's fiancé. You think I'm in love with you? Don't flatter yourself. Even if I were dying, I'd never marry someone like you." "Then what will it take for you to give me the medicine?" he asked. I smiled. "That depends on how sincere you are. I want money. At least 10,000. "Fine, I'll find the money," Lucas said, gritting his teeth. 10,000 was no small sum at that time. But he started scraping it together anyway. When word got out that I'd asked for 10,000 in exchange for the pills, Madison and my ever-biased parents were furious. They scolded me non-stop, calling me heartless, cruel, and ungrateful. I ignored them completely and focused on Grandpa's notes, working on making the pills. I prepared 2 sets. One was completely harmless, just ordinary herbal pills with no effect at all. The other was something else entirely, a pill that would destroy a man's ability to function, rendering him permanently impotent. If Lucas and Madison managed to stop themselves in time, I was willing to let them go. But if not, they'd get exactly what they deserved. When the pills were finally ready, Lucas, after an exhausting effort, gathered the full 10,000 and came back. We exchanged on clear terms, cash for the box. I took the money and handed him the box containing the pills. Lucas, gripping the box tightly, went off to have it verified, looking as if he had just paid for a golden ticket. Back in my room, I quietly stitched the $10,000 into the lining of my clothes. During that time, Madison knocked on my door several times, saying she had something to talk to me about. I ignored her every time. After securing the money, I placed a box into my black cloth satchel and walked out of the room. Outside, Madison, my parents, and Lucas were all waiting, their eyes fixed on me. Lucas must have verified the pills by now. After all, he had taken 81 of them in our past life and would recognize the taste instantly. As soon as I stepped out, Madison asked, "Where are you going?" I swept my gaze over each of their faces and said calmly, "I'm going to the military compound to treat General Atwood." As I spoke, I intentionally shifted my satchel so the box inside peeked out. Madison and Lucas both caught sight of it. Lucas's expression darkened. Madison's face twisted with tension. "Sister," she said, "before you go, your big sister and our parents have prepared a little something for you." I glanced from Madison and Lucas to my ever-biased parents. Oh, I didn't know my sister and our parents had a gift for me. My parents wouldn't meet my gaze. They looked down and mumbled, "Actually, it wasn't from us. Madison and Lucas are getting married soon. They wanted to thank you for everything, so they prepared a special gift." To thank me? For what? For trying to kill me? "Well," I said flatly, "thank you in advance." "The gift is custom-made," Madison added. "You'll need to come with us to get it." Sensing I might not follow willingly, she smiled sweetly. "I promise you'll love it." So I followed them, Madison, Lucas, and my parents, out the door. But instead of taking the main road, they led me down a back path, winding closer and closer to the same river where in our past lives both Madison and I had drowned. I stopped walking. "Why are we going along the river?" I asked. "Why not take the road?" Madison stammered. "It's a shortcut." Soon, we reached the riverbank. There wasn't a soul around. Suddenly, Lucas shouted, "Do it." At his command, my parents lunged forward and grabbed the satchel off my shoulder. Madison ran up to help. I was no match for the four of them. In no time, they had wrestled the bag away. My parents opened it like it was a treasure chest, pulled out the box inside, and handed it to Lucas, who was still in his wheelchair. "Lucas, here. We got it." Lucas opened the box, took out one of the pills, and sniffed it. Familiarity flashed in his eyes. He sneered. "I knew it. Madeline, you tried to trick me with a fake." He looked up, his expression full of venom. "You've been reborn, haven't you? Just like me and Madison. You evil, shameless woman, how dare you use medicine to manipulate me? You must really want to die." I stared at Lucas's cold eyes and replied clearly and slowly, "Lucas Johnson, if you don't want to die a miserable death, you better stop now." "You're threatening me?" He laughed. "You think I'm scared of you? Just because you've latched on to Chase Atwood? You really think tricking me with fake pills and hiding behind him will save you? If you had given me the real medicine from the start, maybe I would have let you live. But now? It's too late. Today you die." As soon as the words left his mouth, Madison suddenly charged at me. I had no time to dodge. She slammed into me hard, knocking me straight into the river. The water splashed violently. I plunged in like dead weight, completely submerged. As I struggled, I heard Lucas's voice from the shore. "Madeline can't swim. She's as good as dead now. We can finally rest easy." Still worried, Madison peered down into the river. Seeing no sign of me surfacing, she finally exhaled in relief. "The current's so strong and she can't swim. She must have been swept away." My father looked uneasy. "What if someone finds out?" "Find out what?" Madison said casually. "When we get home, we'll just say she went missing. If they find her body, we'll claim she slipped and fell in. And if the fish eat her, well, it'll just be another missing person case. No matter what," Lucas added, "she won't be a problem anymore." "We need to leave now," someone said urgently. At once my mother and father rushed forward and pushed Lucas's wheelchair, quickly wheeling him away. The four of them hurried back home. Once they were inside and the door was shut, Madison couldn't wait another second. She poured a glass of water and took out the so-called miracle pills they'd stolen from me, handing them to Lucas. "Lucas, take them now," she said. "As long as you start taking these pills, your body will recover. Just like in our last life, you'll rise quickly, 3 ranks in no time, and once you succeed, Mom and Dad will live comfortably too." Lucas took the pill, the corners of his mouth lifting in a satisfied smile. He had already experienced its miraculous effects in the last life. It would only take 81 days, and he'd be walking again. After that, his meteoric rise would begin. Now that they had the medicine in hand, both Lucas and Madison completely relaxed. Confident everything was under control, they split up to take care of business. That very day, Lucas and Madison went to the Civil Affairs Bureau and got their marriage certificate. Meanwhile, my parents filed a missing person report at the police station, claiming I had disappeared and couldn't be found. After the report was filed, the Yee family began planning Lucas and Madison's wedding. Madison had already envisioned this wedding in detail. She wanted to wear a white gown and hold a grand, extravagant ceremony. The problem was they had no money. According to their original plan, once they killed me, they'd have the $10,000 I had extorted from Lucas. That would be more than enough for a lavish wedding, with plenty left over. Madison had even planned out how to use the remaining money to buy furniture, a bicycle, and a watch. But to their disappointment, no matter how hard they searched my room, they couldn't find a single penny. Where would she have hidden the money? They asked each other, slowly beginning to realize that I must have kept the cash on me. "Madeline was too cunning," Madison hissed. "She must have sewn the money into her clothes or kept it close to her body." "If we'd known sooner," Lucas said with regret, "we would have taken the money first for pushing her into the river." But it was too late now. Their only remaining hope was that my body would eventually be found, and someone would contact them to come claim it. That way, they could search me and recover the money. So they waited and waited, but no one came. No body was found. "Why?" Madison asked nervously. "Could she still be alive?" "No way," Lucas said. "Madeline couldn't swim. I killed her the same way in the last life." So the only explanation was that my body had been eaten by fish. That was the conclusion they settled on. Eventually, when no news came and no body surfaced, they stopped expecting to recover it. Their focus shifted to moving forward. But without the money, there was no wedding. The $10,000 Lucas had given me had been borrowed with great difficulty from all kinds of people. Now it was gone, and they were buried in debt. A grand ceremony was out of the question. So Madison, with nothing but resentment in her heart, moved into Lucas's house without any formal wedding. She was unhappy, but kept reminding herself that Lucas would rise through the ranks again someday. She forced herself to stay calm, to wait. Once Lucas recovered, everything would be okay. Time passed quickly. Nearly 3 months flew by. The box of so-called miracle pills was almost empty. Lucas had taken nearly all of them. And yet he still couldn't stand. He remembered that in his previous life he had started feeling results after just over a month. Why was it so different this time? There was one pill left. Maybe that last one was the key. He recalled that it was right after taking the final pill that he had regained full mobility. Clinging to hope, Lucas swallowed the final pill. "Tomorrow," he told himself, "everything will change." Full of anticipation and excitement, he fell into a deep sleep, dreaming of glory. The next morning, a blood-curdling scream shook the military housing compound where Lucas and Madison now lived. It was so piercing, so horrifying, that all the neighbors rushed to their door. When they pushed it open, they were met with a nightmarish sight. Lucas was lying on the floor, his eyes wide and unfocused, his mouth twisted to the side, drool pouring uncontrollably from his lips. A nauseating stench filled the room. Madison was beside herself, crying and screaming in panic. Didn't he say he'd be fully recovered after 81 days? What a liar. That so-called miracle medicine is worthless. Madison snapped in disgust. He was perfectly fine before taking it. At least we could still have a normal married life. But now, the more he takes it, the worse he gets. Premature ejaculation, total incontinence. He's disgusting, completely repulsive. What are we supposed to do now? What are we going to do? She stared at Lucas with revulsion, refusing to even go near him as he lay on the floor, his eyes askew, his mouth twisted, moaning in agony while losing control of his bowels and bladder. The neighbors, unable to bear the scene, helped rush Lucas to the hospital. Doctors immediately performed a full set of tests, which took nearly 4 or 5 hours. When Madison finally received the report, her scream echoed through the hallway. Complete loss of sexual function, muscular atrophy in both legs, complications with bowel and bladder control. She kept screaming, "Why? Why is this happening?" The hospital made it clear. Lucas's condition was irreversible. There was no hope of recovery. Madison was losing her mind. She couldn't accept the diagnosis. In her last life, none of this had happened. Lucas had recovered fully. He had been no different from a healthy man. Why was everything so different this time? She didn't believe the doctors. She was convinced they were wrong. Desperate, she decided to take Lucas to the capital to find the best specialists and get another opinion. But traveling to the capital was no small task. It required money, time, and effort. And Lucas had become completely dependent on others to survive. Madison might have been able to accept feeding him and helping him drink water, but cleaning up after his constant accidents? That was too much. The moment he ate anything, he lost control. Madison was utterly disgusted. She had no intention of cleaning up after him day and night, so she called in my parents to help bring Lucas to the capital, but neither of them was willing to take care of his mess either. To keep him from soiling himself and the car along the way, the three of them decided together, no more food or drink for Lucas. After starving him for 3 days, Lucas, pale and thin as a skeleton, was finally taken to a hospital in the capital. There, after another full round of tests, the doctors gave them the same exact results. Madison was in despair. She grabbed Lucas by the shoulders and shook him wildly. "Why? Why is this happening? Tell me." Lucas didn't know either. He wanted to scream the same thing. It had been the same medicine, taken the same way as in the last life. Why had it worked then, and completely failed now? Shaken, starving, and dizzy, Lucas whimpered weakly. "Madison, I'm starving. Can you give me something to eat?" Madison turned away in disgust, ignoring him. My parents did the same. A nurse, moved by pity, brought him a glass of water and 2 pieces of steamed bread. Lucas devoured them like a starving animal. Meanwhile, Madison and my parents stepped outside into the hallway to figure out what to do next. "What now?" Madison asked, voice trembling. "Mom, Dad, what am I supposed to do?" Neither of them had an answer. They thought that helping their older daughter get rid of the younger one would lead to an easy life. But things had turned out completely different from what Madison had promised. Not only had Lucas not recovered, his condition had worsened significantly. My mom furrowed her brow. "Madison? I told you. Your dad and I told you. After your grandfather died, we searched the house top to bottom. There was no miracle medicine, nothing. Why didn't you believe us? You brought this on yourself." "I didn't believe it either," Madison said bitterly. "But in the last life, Lucas recovered after marrying Madeline. I saw it with my own eyes. Lucas told me himself that Madeline gave him the pills your dad left behind. I saw it. After he got better, he kept getting promoted. He and Madeline moved into a private villa, with maids and guards. They drove everywhere. I swear I'm not lying." Madison was desperate. She had seen all of it with her own eyes in the past. "Well, we didn't live your past life," my mom said coldly. "But right now, Lucas is like this. So what are you going to do about it?" "If it really comes to that," Madison said, her voice hollow, "then maybe I'll just divorce him." "Are you crazy? Military marriages aren't that easy to dissolve," my mother snapped. "Especially now that Lucas is like this. If you dare file for divorce, you'll be punished. You could even end up in jail." "Then what do you expect me to do?" Madison's voice cracked with frustration. "I can't possibly waste my entire life on this half-paralyzed mess." My parents fell silent. Just then, several nurses rushed down the hallway, speaking in hurried excitement. "General Atwood is here for his checkup. Oh my God, I haven't seen him in a month and he's walking." "No kidding, it's a miracle. The last test clearly showed he'd never stand again." "How is he walking now?" "Rumor is, there's an incredible healer by his side, a miracle doctor who brought his legs back to life." "Seriously? Is it a man or a woman? Maybe some old white-haired master?" "Nope. I heard it's a young woman. Really young. Her name's Madeline Ye. The name Madeline Ye made Madison and my parents freeze in place. They exchanged stunned glances. It can't be, Madison murmured. It must be someone with the same name. It can't be her. But the next second, a group of people appeared at the end of the corridor, and when they saw who was walking at the front, the three of them instinctively rubbed their eyes in disbelief. There, in a floral dress and polished leather shoes, smiling radiantly, was me. Alive. In perfect health. They stared at me like they were seeing a ghost. No way, Madison muttered. No way. I was the one who pushed her into the river. She didn't even finish the sentence before my mother clapped a hand over her mouth. Only then did she realize what she had just said. Out loud. The three of them stood frozen as I approached, walking beside General Chase Atwood, surrounded by over a dozen of his guards, drawing the attention of everyone in the hospital. My parents trembled when they saw me. I met their shocked expressions with a cold, mocking smile. I stopped in front of them. Were you calling me? You're okay? My mother stammered, her voice shaking. I knew how terrified they were seeing me alive. Sorry to disappoint you, I said coolly. But I'm alive and well. You must have assumed I couldn't swim, which is why you pushed me into that river, right? Shame for you. I came back and made learning to swim the first thing on my list. It was all a misunderstanding. My mother tried to explain, flustered. I narrowed my eyes, cutting her off. So, what brings you and your beloved daughter here today? Don't tell me you're trying to get treatment for Lucas Johnson. That's right, she blurted, seizing on the excuse. Lucas's condition worsened, and Madison thought bringing him to the Capitol might help. Right then, we heard the squeak of wheelchair wheels. Lucas emerged from his hospital room, struggling to push himself down the hall. The moment his eyes landed on me, standing tall next to Chase, whose legs were clearly fine, his eyes widened in disbelief. No way, this can't be happening. In his last life, General Chase Atwood had died in a car accident. Even before that, his legs had always been paralyzed. But now, he was not only alive, he could walk. How was this possible? Lucas's mind couldn't grasp it. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. The events of this life were deviating wildly from the last. He needed an explanation, and he knew the only person who had the answer was me. It had to be me. I must have switched the pills. I must have given the real miracle medicine, the one meant for him, to General Atwood instead. That had to be why Chase could walk again. But if that were true, was there still hope for him? The thought terrified him. What if this time he really never walked again? Then what was the point of being reborn at all? The fear shook him to the core. His body trembled, and even his voice faltered as he looked straight at me and choked out. You switched the pills, didn't you? I smirked, meeting his panic with amusement. What do you think? It was you. Lucas started coughing violently, his rage boiling over. He had been so sure he was in control that he'd been the one with the advantage. He had never once considered that the hunter might become the hunted. I raised an eyebrow and watched his face drain of color. Regretting it now, aren't you? Lucas didn't answer. But I didn't need him to. I already knew the truth. He regretted everything. I looked at Lucas's pale, ashen face with a mocking smile and said slowly, You're regretting something, aren't you? If you had known I'd switched the pills, you wouldn't have acted so rashly. You would have waited, wouldn't you? Been more patient, taken the pills, stood up first, and then tried to kill me. Lucas said nothing, but the look on his face betrayed everything he was thinking. My smirk widened. But I warned you, didn't I? When you went completely insane and tried to kill me, I told you to stop, to turn back before it was too late. You didn't listen? And now you regret it? Isn't that a bit late? When did you switch the pills? He asked, voice tight with desperation. He needed an answer. I smiled lightly. I never switched anything. Never. You're lying. I don't believe you. If you didn't switch them, why can't I walk? You gave my medicine to him, didn't you? He pointed at Chase Atwood. That's why he can walk. You stole what was mine and gave it to him. I cut him off before he could say more. Do you really think it still matters what you say now, Lucas? Do you want to know why you ended up like this? It's not because I gave your miracle pills to someone else. It's because those pills never existed. I don't believe you, Lucas shouted. You're lying. If there were no miracle pills, then why could I walk in the last life? Why can he walk now? Because your recovery had nothing to do with the pills, I said clearly, enunciating every word. You're missing the most important detail. What did I miss? He asked. You forgot me, I said softly, almost laughing. Have you ever once considered that the reason either of you could walk wasn't the medicine, but me? That's impossible, Lucas muttered. Is it? Chase Atwood, who had been silently watching, finally spoke up. I didn't recover because I took some miracle cure. I can walk now because she treated me with acupuncture every single day. Acupuncture? Lucas's eyes flickered, and then something clicked. He remembered it. Back in our last life, after we got married, there had been a set of silver acupuncture needles in the nightstand drawer. He had asked me once what they were for, and I'd told him they were for treating illness. He hadn't paid it any mind. He never imagined I actually knew medicine, never connected me with the person healing him. To him, I had just been a housemaid, a caregiver, someone insignificant, someone beneath notice. So, was it really acupuncture that cured his legs in the last life? He didn't want to believe it. Then why? He asked bitterly. Why did you lie and tell me there was a miracle pill? You really don't know, I replied coldly. You were willing to die for Madison. You refused every attempt at treatment. I had no choice but to lie to you just to make you cooperate. I never imagined, I went on, that you could be so heartless. After everything I did for you, after I saved you, cared for you, you repaid me with betrayal and murder. You're nothing but a soulless monster, a coward. Lucas's face turned a deeper shade of gray with every word. He spat. Isn't it because you were in love with me? You forced Madison to leave so you could take her place. You couldn't stand seeing us together. I laughed coldly. You? You think I wanted you? Do you know why I married you? Madison didn't want to. You were a cripple, and she didn't want to waste her life on a man who couldn't walk. She already had another man outside, so they forced me to take her place. That's not true, Lucas roared. Madison isn't like that. Don't you dare slander her. Even now, he was defending her. Love really is blind. Whether he believed me or not didn't matter. He would suffer the consequences, not me. Believe whatever you want, I said calmly. It won't change the fact that you're a heartless, ungrateful monster. Even a tiger won't eat its own cubs, but you? You shoved me into a river while I was pregnant. You're worse than a beast. Lucas's face went deathly pale. He had no way to fight back, no place to hide. He thought this was the lowest point of his suffering. But he was wrong. This was only the beginning. I gave a cold laugh and stared straight at him. Lucas Johnson, I whispered. You're about to learn what true regret feels like. I looked at Lucas's ashen face with a sneer. I knew you were heartless and soulless, a complete bastard, but I still considered giving you a chance. I thought maybe heaven has compassion for all living things. Maybe I should let you live. But you refused to take the road to heaven and insisted on barging into hell. If you had stopped Madison from pushing me into the river, if you'd backed off then, I wouldn't have saved you. But I also wouldn't have let you end up like this. You tampered with the medicine? That's right, I said. It wasn't some kind of miracle cure. It was poison. It's designed to make your life worse than death. Lucas gasped, struggling to breathe. You're evil, so vicious. Compared to you? I raised an eyebrow. I'm far less cruel. Give it up, Lucas. Your condition can't be cured. The rest of your life will be spent in that wheelchair, soiling yourself. Enjoy it. And I really hope the woman you love, Madison, will stay devoted and faithful to you until the end. We'll see about that, I added coldly as I turned and walked away. A loud thud rang out behind me, followed by a nauseating stench. I didn't need to turn around to know. Lucas had lost control of his bowels again. The doctors confirmed there was no hope for his recovery. Madison, along with her parents, had no choice but to bring Lucas home. Once she realized he would never walk again, Madison was filled with overwhelming regret. But divorce wasn't an option. Military marriages didn't dissolve so easily, especially now that Lucas was disabled. And taking care of him, someone who couldn't control his own body, was out of the question for her. Since Lucas was no longer fit to stay on base, the Army arranged for his discharge. He received a lump sum and a monthly disability pension, and they were kicked out of military housing. From the very first day they left the compound, Lucas's life turned into a living hell. Madison completely abandoned him. Unable to care for himself, Lucas was left to crawl around the house. Meanwhile, she went out every day to find other men to enjoy herself with. Lucas barely had food. One meal might come, the next wouldn't. He lived like a stray, filthy, and helpless. Whenever Madison came home and found the place reeking from his mess, she flew into a rage and beat him. Slaps, kicks, even sticks. As she beat him, she screamed, "You damn jinx, good days never come my way. All the bad luck in the world just had to find me." Lucas cried out in pain, pleading, "Madison, please. You can't treat me like this. We're in this together. I love you. You're the only one I care about. I'm just not able to walk right now, but I'll find a way. I'll stand again, I promise." He thought saying that might soften her heart. It only made things worse. "You? Still dreaming about walking? Keep dreaming," she shouted. "The doctors already said you're done for life, and you're a curse. You ruined my last life, and now you're dragging me down in this one too. You've destroyed me twice, do you even understand that?" Madison had finally dropped the mask. She glared at him, her face twisted with hatred. "Back then, I only hooked up with you because you recovered. I figured with your rank and connections, I could climb up too. I didn't know you'd bring me nothing but death." You were using me all along?" Lucas trembled. "You thought I loved you?" she laughed. "Does love put food on the table? Have you even looked at yourself in the mirror lately? You're disgusting. I must have done something awful in a past life to be cursed with you in two. Back then, I wasn't even supposed to die. But you couldn't make a damn decision. You dragged your feet, and I had to fake a suicide to force you to break things off with her. I left a note and went to the river, planning to pretend to jump in, but the bank collapsed beneath me and I actually fell in." "And you knew the truth?" Lucas's voice cracked with rage. Madison gave him a crooked smile. "Of course I did. What, you thought I was some innocent little princess? Snow White, please, just thinking about it pisses me off. I thought I was destined for comfort and glory, but all I got was you. You ungrateful bastard, you deserve this. You can't walk because heaven finally gave you what you deserved." Lucas never imagined that the woman he loved so deeply would turn out to be someone like that. Overwhelmed with rage and disbelief, he fainted on the spot. After that day, Madison stopped pretending altogether. Since she and Lucas had already torn off all pretenses and he was now a cripple, she no longer saw the need to hold back. He couldn't stop her anyway. For her own convenience, she began bringing her lovers home to mess around, right there in front of him. Lying on the floor, helpless, Lucas could hear Madison and her men in the bedroom. The sounds pierced his soul, each moment more unbearable than the last. He finally understood why fate had sent him back, not for redemption but as punishment. Because he had been too cruel, too shameless, because he had done things that violated heaven's principles. He realized this second chance wasn't a gift. It was retribution. He couldn't take it anymore. After a lot of thought, Lucas finally told Madison, "I don't want to go on like this. I'll let you go. We can get divorced." "You really mean it?" Madison was suspicious. "Of course. Just invite your parents over so we can talk it through properly." Madison thought she was finally free of Lucas. What she didn't know was that Lucas had laid a trap. For her, and for her parents. He asked her to prepare a nice meal, and while she was busy, he secretly laced the wine with sleeping drugs. Once Madison and her parents drank the spiked alcohol, they passed out. Lucas locked the doors and set the house on fire. Flames roared into the night, and screams echoed under the moonlight. News of Lucas, Madison, and her parents' deaths reached me just as I returned from the courthouse with Caleb after registering our marriage. When I heard about it, I didn't feel any sorrow. From the moment Madison and her parents pushed me into the river, they ceased to be my family. They were strangers, and the death of strangers has nothing to do with me. This second life, I was meant to live it well. From this point forward, all the toxic people and ugliness were behind me. Even if the road ahead wouldn't be easy, at least it would be free of those who wished me harm. And with that alone, I was sure I could live a very, very happy life. Bookmark back. Reborn in 1977, I deliberately tore up my college acceptance letter, stayed in the village to feed pigs and raise cattle, willingly becoming a simple country girl. All because, in my past life, just as I received my first college acceptance letter, my fiancé, Ethan Carter, the regiment commander, was suddenly diagnosed with a terminal illness. He cried and begged me to sell my acceptance letter to Lily White in exchange for financial support. Emma, you have so many chances to take the exam again, but my mother is still at home, and I still want to marry you. Just this once, please? Remembering our years of love, I had no choice but to agree. On our wedding day, he gazed at me with deep affection, promising to love me for a lifetime. But soon after, he dedicated himself to serving the country, honoring duty above all else, leaving me behind to care for our children, slowly extinguishing my desire for education. My entire life passed in hardship and sacrifice. Until the moment before I died, I begged him and our children to stay with me one last time. But Ethan shook off my hand, insisting on taking our children to Lily White's research conference instead. Emma, if it weren't for Lily wanting to go to college back then, I wouldn't have faked an illness just to marry you for that acceptance letter. For over 60 years, I've suffered endlessly. Now just let me go. Through the cold telephone line, my children blamed me as well. Mom, you should have let Dad and Aunt Lily be together back then. If not for you, they would have been together long ago. You've shamed us. You ruined the love of a great scientist. We're taking you to beg Aunt Lily for forgiveness. At that moment, my heart completely died. So my entire life had been nothing more than a joke. All of this just because of my acceptance letter. Then I was reborn. I returned to the day I received my acceptance letter, the day Ethan cried and begged me to save his life. Emma, I don't want to die yet. Please, give me your acceptance letter and save me. He bent down close to my ear, pleading, his strong hands gripping my arm, shaking me relentlessly. The pain made me gasp softly, and when I looked at the young Ethan Carter, I finally realized I had been reborn. Emma, I know this is hard for you, but you can take the college entrance exam as many times as you want. I can't bear to die. If I die, who will protect you? I haven't even fulfilled my promise to marry you yet. I still want to raise our children with you. If I die just like this, I won't accept it. He sighed in frustration. If you insist on going to college, then I'll just let fate take its course. But Emma, we've known each other for 18 years. Can you really bear to let me go? Before I could even answer, his eyes reddened with tears, pretending to look devastated, as if he was about to leave, rejected. In my past life, on the very day I received my acceptance letter, Ethan had said these exact same words. Back then, out of love and nostalgia, I painfully gave up my future and agreed to his request. And the first thing Ethan did after recovering was marry me. At our wedding, he knelt before me and made a solemn vow. Emma, you saved my life. I will spend the rest of my days repaying you. I will fully support your dreams. I will make you the happiest woman. For the first year of our marriage, I remained focused on my studies. But just as I was preparing to retake the college entrance exam, Ethan begged me to have a child. He said his mother was gravely ill, and her only wish was to see her grandchild. He knelt before me, pleading humbly. In the end, I softened and gave in. But after giving birth, our baby cried endlessly. His mother's illness worsened, and I had no choice but to keep postponing my education. Again and again, until I completely abandoned my dream of studying. And when I saw Lily holding my college acceptance letter, living the life that should have been mine, I pinned all my hopes on my children instead. I worked tirelessly, sacrificing myself to raise 2 outstanding children for Ethan. But years later, as I lay dying in a hospital bed, my children didn't hesitate to pull out my life support tube. Mom, you're just a dying person. Stop holding us back. Aunt Lily has an excellent degree and credentials. She can take us to even greater heights. You're just an old, washed-up woman, bringing nothing but shame to us. If it weren't for you, Dad and Aunt Lily would have been together long ago. You ruined such a legendary love story. Don't you feel guilty? You should use your death to atone for Aunt Lily. My hands trembled as I reached out, grabbing Ethan's arm, desperately hoping he would save me. But without hesitation, he coldly pushed me away. I've already spent 60 years repaying you. That's more than enough to make up for that college acceptance letter. I never loved you. Please, let me go. A lifetime of struggle, only to end up abandoned by everyone I once held dear. My entire existence had been a joke, all because I foolishly believed in the lies of the man standing before me. But now I had been given another chance. I would never make the same mistake again. I lifted my gaze and stared at Ethan, my voice calm and detached. "So, the only way to save your life is with my acceptance letter?" I let out a small sigh and shook my head. "Too bad, I already tore it up." His expression shifted instantly. "Tore it up? No way, you're joking, right?" Ethan was so shocked that he forgot to cry. He lunged forward and grabbed my wrist. Pain shot up my arm, but this time I didn't hesitate. I wrenched myself free from his grasp without mercy. He froze, staring at me in disbelief. In the past, I had always clung to him, eager for his affection. But now that I had been reborn, the only thing I wanted was to stay as far away from him as possible. "I don't want to go to college anymore," I said flatly. "So I just tore it up. I've decided to stay in the village and raise pigs instead. Sorry, I can't save your life." I had no interest in explaining further, so I threw out the excuse carelessly and hurried away. Since it was getting late, Ethan hesitated, likely afraid of attracting gossip from the neighbors. He didn't dare chase after me. The moment I returned home, I carefully tucked the acceptance letter beneath my bed, ensuring no one would ever find it. This time, I wouldn't let anyone take away the life that rightfully belonged to me. I knew Ethan wouldn't give up so easily. He was bound to make another move soon. Sure enough, the next morning, as soon as I stepped out of the house, I saw him waving at me from afar, looking eager. Emma, are you heading out to gather pig feed? You're really not going to school? Can you at least take out the acceptance letter and let me see if it's still usable? You must have gotten into a really good college. Isn't it a shame to waste it?" He spoke so naturally, as if it were perfectly reasonable to ask me to give up my future for him. He even set his hoe down and started weeding the grass in front of my house, as if trying to impress me with his hard work. I felt uneasy at his sudden enthusiasm and turned to leave, but before I could, my father caught me. "You ungrateful girl, can't you see Ethan is talking to you?" My father valued Ethan greatly. He was an uneducated man who believed that only those in power were truly capable. Ethan had become a regiment commander at such a young age, while I was nothing more than a bookworm. To my father, marrying Ethan meant securing a good life. In my past life, I had followed his wishes and married Ethan, only to realize too late how wrong I had been. After our wedding, Ethan began looking down on my father, treating him with nothing but disdain. Whenever my father traveled all the way from the village to bring us fresh pork, duck, or geese, Ethan would accept everything with a smile, then immediately send my father away under the excuse that our children were too timid to meet strangers. Even on the day my father died, when I wanted to return home to attend his funeral, Ethan refused. "Your children's education is more important," he had told me. He forcibly kept me at home, and by the time I finally managed to return, I had missed my father's final moments. But when it came to Lily's father, Dr. White, Ethan treated him with nothing but the highest respect. He would personally bring the finest tea and wine to visit, always making sure our children called him Grandpa White, treating him like royalty. In my past life, I had endured it all, forcing my father to suffer humiliation after humiliation. This time, at the very least, I had the power to choose not to marry Ethan. Ethan only cleared a small patch of weeds before coming back over, attempting to strike up another conversation. But I was focused on feeding the pigs, refusing to spare him even a glance. Undeterred, he reached out and grabbed my hand, playing the part of a devoted lover. "Are you still mad at me over what happened a few days ago?" His voice was low and coaxing. "I only did that because I love you too much. I was desperate to marry you. Either way, you're going to be my wife sooner or later. Even if someone caught us sneaking around, it wouldn't be a big deal. But Lily, she's still an innocent young woman. She couldn't handle people talking about her." The moment he mentioned her name, my mind was flooded with memories of that night, the night I accidentally stumbled upon their disgusting little secret. That night, I had been out searching for a lost duck when I unexpectedly walked in on Ethan and Lily, tangled up together in the woods. The moment Lily saw me, she let out a sharp scream and bolted. The commotion drew the attention of the neighbors, who rushed out to investigate. But by the time they arrived, The only people left standing there were me and Ethan, alone in the dark. The rumors began the very next day. Whispers about how I was a shameless girl, incapable of behaving properly, spread through the village like wildfire. Every morning on my way to school, children would throw rocks at me, shouting insults. Even the front of my house wasn't spared. Someone had left an old, tattered shoe outside my door, a cruel symbol implying I was no better than a discarded woman. And now, Ethan had the audacity to bring it up so casually, as if I had been the one in the wrong. I clenched my fists, staring at him with cold, unwavering eyes. This time, I would not let history repeat itself. Every time I had tried to explain myself, Ethan would coax me with gentle words, convincing me otherwise. "This is for the best," he would say. "Now we can be together openly, without hiding anymore. There's nothing you can't endure for me, right? If you expose Lily, she won't be able to handle it. Be good, Emma. Just endure it a little longer, for my sake." Even now, just thinking about it made my heart ache. He had protected Lily at my expense, throwing me into the fire of public shame without a second thought. He had never cared about the humiliation and suffering I endured. I took a deep breath, my voice hoarse as I finally spoke. "You look perfectly healthy to me. You don't seem like someone on the verge of death. Shouldn't you stay far away from me now?" Ethan had never been rejected by me before. The moment he heard my words, his face darkened. "Emma, are you actually giving me attitude right now? All I want is your acceptance letter. If you don't want to break up with me, then hand it over, fast, or don't come crying to me later." His mood turned foul, and he threw his hoe onto the ground, standing with his arms crossed under the shade of a tree. Threatening me with a breakup was his favorite tactic. He had done it countless times before. If I didn't help Lily with her assignments, he'd threaten to break up. If I didn't bring Lily food, he'd throw a tantrum, even if she didn't like the meals I made. Now, all it took was me speaking to him with a slightly colder tone, and he was already using the same old threat. Yet, when Lily tugged his ear and scolded him, he would grin and apologize like a fool. In my past life, his threats had always worked. I had done everything he wanted, exhausting myself to please him. But now, I was simply tired. With an indifferent expression, I replied, "I told you, I tore it up. I don't have it anymore, and I never will." Without another word, I turned and ran back into the house. Ethan shouted after me, but I didn't look back. Instead, I quickened my pace, instinctively wiping my nose when no one was looking. The moment I shut the door behind me, I let out a quiet sigh of relief, thinking this ridiculous situation had finally ended. But as soon as I lifted my head, I froze, my breath catching in my throat. Lily was sitting on my bed, holding the acceptance letter I had hidden just last night. She smiled at me and waved the paper in her hand. "Since you insist that your acceptance letter is torn, then I suppose this one belongs to me now." My eyes widened in disbelief. "How did you find it?" "No one knew where I hid it." I stared at the paper in her hands, checking again and again. It was undeniably my acceptance letter. Lily smirked and raised an eyebrow toward Ethan, who was standing behind me, looking guilty. "Of course," Ethan told me. "He said you always like to hide important things under your bed." I turned stiffly, staring at Ethan. His lips were pressed together, as if he felt ashamed. So that was his true reason for showing up at my house so early in the morning. He wasn't here to win me over. He had only come to distract me, giving Lily enough time to steal my acceptance letter. A bitter taste filled my throat. I wanted to cry, but knew it was pointless. "You really think stealing my acceptance letter means you can take my place at school?" I asked, my voice steady despite my anger. "Aren't you afraid I'll report you?" Lily didn't even flinch. She carefully folded my acceptance letter and slipped it into her pocket before looking up at me lazily. "Have you forgotten who my mother is?" she sneered. "If you dare report me, you can say goodbye to your family's ration and postage stamps." My heart clenched. The fiery rage inside me was instantly smothered. Lily's mother was the leader of the production brigade, responsible for distributing ration stamps. In this era, money wasn't enough to buy food. Ration stamps were more valuable than cash. No wonder she was bold enough to steal from me. She knew she had leverage. I let out a bitter chuckle, feeling an overwhelming sense of helplessness. Even in this life, despite all my efforts, my acceptance letter had still ended up in Lily's hands. Behind me, Ethan hesitated for a long time before finally reaching out to pat my shoulder. "I'm sorry, Emma," he muttered. "I did lie to you. I was never actually sick. But if you give your acceptance letter to Lily, I promise I'll marry you right away. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you." He spoke as if someone was holding a knife to his throat, forcing him to agree. As if marrying me was nothing but an obligation. I stared at his conflicted expression, feeling no joy, no relief, only disgust. "Ethan, I don't want to marry you anymore," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I just want my acceptance letter back." The moment the words left my lips, Ethan's face twisted. Ethan furrowed his brows and let out a long sigh before speaking in a resigned tone. "Emma, stop being difficult. Going to college is really important for Lily. If it makes you feel better, I promise I won't contact her anymore in the future." Lily wiped at her tear-streaked face, looking delicate and pitiful. "Emma, I'm doing this for your own good. I know you like Ethan, and I thought that if I left, the two of you could finally be together." I had no patience for their lies. Without hesitation, I lunged forward, snatching the acceptance letter from Lily's hands. Just as I was about to hide it again, a sharp voice rang out from a distance. "What are you two making a scene about?" The moment I saw my father, I clung to him like a lifeline, tears welling in my eyes. "Dad, Ethan said he'd only marry me if I gave my acceptance letter to Lily. But I don't want to get married. I want to go to school." No matter how arrogant Ethan and Lily were, they were still just kids. The presence of an elder made them instinctively fearful. Ethan stumbled over his words as he tried to explain. "Uncle, I really want to marry Emma. If she goes to college, she'll be too far away. I won't be able to take care of her." My father took my hand, giving me a reassuring grip. I thought he was about to scold Ethan and Lily. Instead, he took my acceptance letter and placed it in Ethan's hands. "You're a good kid. I trust you with my daughter." I stared in shock as my father turned to me with a stern expression. "Emma, stop making a fuss. What's the point of a woman studying? It's just to find a good husband in the end. Listen to your father and don't embarrass your man." Ethan's eyes lit up with excitement as he clutched the letter, while I stood frozen as if struck by lightning. It wasn't until Ethan left that my father patted my shoulder, snapping me out of my daze. "Silly girl, you must be so happy right now. Just stay home and prepare for your wedding. Your father will give you the best dowry, even if it costs me my life. You've had a hard life, losing your mother at a young age. But now, you're finally going to have a good life," he said, voice cracking as he wiped at his eyes. I knew that, in my father's eyes, this was the best future he could arrange for me. But how could he understand? The Carter family was nothing but a den of wolves. I ran after Ethan, and even from a distance, I heard him speaking to Lily in a gentle, affectionate tone I had never heard before. "Lily, now you can pursue your dreams and go to college. Don't worry, I won't let Emma leave. No one can stop you, and I'll come find you once this is over. We'll talk things through then. Emma will understand and support us, won't she?" They had stolen my acceptance letter, sentenced me to a lifetime of servitude to the Carter family, and now they acted as if I was the one in the wrong. There was no time for sorrow. I rushed forward and grabbed Lily's arm, my grip tight with desperation. "Give me back my acceptance letter." Ethan was startled by my sudden appearance. His expression darkened with annoyance. "Emma, that's enough. I already agreed to marry you and give you the rest of my life as compensation. What more do you want? How long are you going to keep making a scene?" I took a deep breath, swallowing the bitterness rising in my throat. My focus remained on the acceptance letter in Lily's hand. She twisted and turned, trying to dodge me. Just as I was about to snatch it back, she raised her hand and slapped me hard across the face. A sharp sting spread through my cheek, and my ears buzzed from the impact. Lily's expression twisted with malice as she gritted her teeth. "If I can't have it, neither can you." With a vicious tug, she ripped the acceptance letter in half. I stood there in shock, watching the pieces flutter to the ground, scattered by the wind. My mind went blank. "If I can't go to college, then neither can you," Lily sneered. "Try again next year if you want, but if you do, I'll just take it from you again. If you have the guts, Go ahead and fight me for the rest of your life. I reached out, my fingers grasping helplessly at the fragments of my future as they disappeared into the wind. Ethan's voice was filled with reproach. Emma, this is all your fault. If you hadn't tried to snatch the letter back, Lily wouldn't have torn it in a panic. How are you going to make it up to her? Now she can't go to college because of you. You have to take the exam again next year and give her your acceptance letter. Otherwise, don't expect me to marry you this year. No matter what Lily did, Ethan would always take her side. Before I could even open my mouth, he had already placed the blame on me. Lily pouted, playing the victim, even though she was the one who had just destroyed my future. And now, because of Emma, everything is ruined, Lily sobbed. I'd rather be dead than suffer this humiliation. There's no one in this entire town with better grades than her. If I want to go to college, my mother will have to find someone from another town and try to buy their acceptance letter. Or maybe, Emma, you could promise to take the exam again next year and give me your letter as soon as you receive it. Otherwise, no matter how much you regret this, I will never forgive you. Seeing her furious expression, I almost wished I really had been the one to tear up the acceptance letter. The way she scolded me, as if I had committed the worst crime imaginable, was laughable. I wiped my tears and stood up, completely unfazed. Regret? I have nothing to regret. You two, on the other hand, are completely finished. Lily let out a mocking snort, her face full of disdain. You're insane. That was your acceptance letter. What does this have to do with Ethan or me? I bent down and picked up the largest fragment of the shredded letter. It just so happened to be the part with the name on it. Smirking, I turned to face them. Did I ever say this was my acceptance letter? I said slowly. Hate to break it to you, but this actually belongs to someone else, specifically to the mayor's daughter, Sophia Shen. Lily's face immediately paled. I continued, my tone casual. Sophia and I are close friends. It just so happened that she was accepted into the same university as me, but for a major she didn't like. I, on the other hand, got accepted for her favorite major, so we decided to swap acceptance letters before officially enrolling. I only received hers yesterday, and I hadn't even sent out mine yet before you two tore it to pieces. I tilted my head slightly, watching the fear creep onto Lily's face. Tell me, do you think the mayor will let you off for this? Ethan swallowed nervously, snatching the fragment from my hand and scanning the name on it. His mouth opened, but no words came out. He was completely speechless. Lily clutched Ethan's arm, her lips trembling. What do we do now? She whimpered, her eyes filled with tears. I never meant to offend Sophia. This could ruin my entire future. Then, as if something clicked in her mind, her panic turned to rage. She whipped her head toward me. Voice shrill. Emma, you did this on purpose, didn't you? You planned this all along. I shrugged nonchalantly. I didn't tell you to steal from me. That was all Ethan's idea. If you want to blame someone, blame him. I turned on my heel and walked away, leaving behind the sound of Lily's sobbing and Ethan's furious shouting. It didn't take long for the mayor to hear about what had happened. He arrived at my house in a hurry, his face filled with barely contained fury. His daughter had worked hard for 18 years to earn her place in college, only to have her acceptance letter destroyed because of Lily's recklessness. I calmly recounted the entire incident to him, from Ethan pressuring me to give up my acceptance letter, to them outright stealing it from my home. As I spoke, the mayor's expression darkened, his frustration growing with every word. He let out a long, heavy sigh, his hands tightening into fists. It's all because my daughter was greedy, he muttered. She insisted on switching majors with you. And now, thanks to this disaster, she has to retake the college entrance exam next year. His voice turned sharp. As for Lily, I will not let this slide. A girl her age, daring to do something so bold, she needs to be taught a lesson. The mayor was just about to leave when, from a distance, Lily's voice rang out in a high-pitched wail. I didn't do it on purpose. It's all Emma's fault. She set me up. The mayor froze mid-step, turning to glare at her. But Lily wasn't done. You know Emma's family is poor, she cried, voice trembling. She's always been jealous of people like us. That's why she purposely tore up the letter and blamed it on me. Everyone in the village knows how she treats me. She's always bullied me. Then she pointed at Ethan. And why would Ethan help me steal her acceptance letter? He's my fiancé. Why would he help me do something like that? It doesn't make any sense. Lily's lies flowed smoothly, and what shocked me most wasn't her ability to twist the truth. It was how quickly the entire village backed her up. One by one, the villagers stepped forward, nodding in agreement. That's right. Lily is a good girl. She would never steal someone's acceptance letter. Her mother is the village leader. She raised her well. A girl like that wouldn't do such a thing. Bookmark. Go back. Emma, on the other hand. Someone let out a knowing chuckle. She's always sneaking around with men in the woods. Who knows what kind of dirty things she's done? I clenched my fists, feeling the rage and helplessness build inside me. Even in this life, no matter how hard I tried to change my fate, they still found a way to twist everything against me. People like her must have a filthy mind, a villager scoffed. If that wasn't her own acceptance letter, then whose could it be? I stood there in stunned silence, watching as the mayor slowly approached me. His eyes were dark with anger. I never expected you to be bold enough to lie to me, he said coldly. Are you ready to face the consequences of your actions? I shook my head helplessly, finally realizing that tears were streaming down my face uncontrollably. I swear, I didn't do it. You can ask my father. He was there the whole time. He saw Ethan and Lily take my things with his own eyes. But the mayor's expression only grew darker, his gaze filled with contempt. Of course, your father would defend you. Do you take me for a fool? You're just a young girl, and instead of focusing on your studies, you're already learning how to manipulate people. Do you really think having an education will make you untouchable? Your hardships are only just beginning. You should be grateful for the life you have now. These are the best days you'll ever get. With a dismissive glance, he turned away and climbed into his car. The villagers cheered as they sent him off, their faces filled with joy. But only I knew that my future had just been sealed. Even if the mayor's daughter never went to college, she would still live a comfortable life. Meanwhile, even if I did get an education, it would all be for nothing. I had offended the one person I should never have crossed. In a time like this, when someone in power wanted to ruin you, there was nothing you could do to fight back. Knowledge was valuable, but power was far greater. It was the same reason Lily's mother, despite only being the village committee leader, could control the distribution of ration and postage stamps. She had the power to manipulate the villagers, and they were more than willing to stand up for her daughter. Even though they knew Lily was lying, they repeated her version of the story so many times that they convinced themselves it was the truth. I lifted my head and looked at Ethan and Lily. There was not a trace of guilt on their faces, only smug satisfaction. Ethan walked over to me, his expression deliberately gentle as he ruffled my hair. I gave you a chance last night, Emma. You were the one who didn't take it. I stiffened. Last night, he had climbed over my window, knocking softly against the glass. He had pleaded with me, begging me not to tell the mayor the truth. He wanted me to take the blame for everything. In return, he promised to marry me properly, to make me his wife with dignity and honor. I had grabbed a broom and swung it straight at his face, telling him to get as far away from me as possible. I would never marry him. I would never listen to him. Before leaving, he had gritted his teeth and said, "You'll regret this, Emma." And now, here I was, regretting nothing but my own past foolishness. After the villagers dispersed, Ethan lingered behind. His voice was low and coaxing. There's no point in you going to college now. Why not just give the acceptance letter to Lily? Think of it as doing a good deed. Do it for me, okay? He paused, then added, even if you do graduate, what will it change? Right now, I'm already a regiment commander. Soon, I'll become the mayor. After that, I'll be promoted to a general. No matter how hard you study, you'll never catch up to me. His voice turned softer, smoother, the same tone he always used when speaking to Lily. Emma, this is your last chance. Give up your meaningless future, and in exchange, you'll marry into a life of prestige. Isn't that a good deal? I wiped my tears and stood up. Reaching into my pocket, I pulled out my acceptance letter, holding it tightly against my chest. Never, I said firmly. Even if I don't go to college, I will never marry you. No matter what happens, I will never, ever marry you. I shoved him aside with all my strength and ran back into my house. Covering my face with my hands, I broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. Outside, Ethan stood frozen for a long time before he finally sneered, his voice filled with menace. Fine, but don't come crying to me when you change your mind. I lay in bed, curled up in misery, not moving for an entire day. It wasn't until my father came in and coaxed me gently that I finally ate my first bite of food. But when I looked up at his meal, I realized he had only taken a few sips of thin porridge. "Why aren't you eating?" I asked, my voice hoarse. My father hesitated, but under my insistence, he finally admitted the truth. Lily's mother had cut off our ration stamps. They were going to starve us into submission. A surge of fury burned through me, driving away the despair that had weighed me down all day. Even in my past life, my father had been treated unfairly and humiliated time and time again. But this time, I wouldn't let them win. I realized I couldn't keep going on like this. I poured the rest of my rice into my father's bowl, swallowed 2 gulps of cold water, and ran out the door. If no one in this village would speak up for me, then I would fight for my own justice. There was no time to waste. I carefully sealed the torn pieces of my acceptance letter in an envelope and took them to the military base. Fortunately, I had walked this path to Ethan's unit countless times before. Even with my eyes closed, I could find my way there. At the entrance, I claimed to be Ethan's fiancée visiting him. As the saying goes, good news never spreads, but gossip travels fast. All sorts of rumors about me and Ethan had already spread within the unit, so the guard didn't hesitate to let me in. I had barely stepped inside the base when I ran straight into Ethan, his face dark with displeasure. "What are you doing here? Did you really chase me all the way here?" He smirked, crossing his arms. "Are you regretting rejecting me? Have you finally decided to hand over the acceptance letter to Lily?" His tone turned condescending. "Too bad, Emma. I already gave you a chance. Even if you hand it over now, I won't marry you immediately. I'll think about when to propose later." He extended his hands toward me expectantly. "Now, give me the letter. You can leave afterward. If people see you here, they'll start talking. I don't want to be the laughingstock of the base." He went on and on, listing his demands as if I had no choice but to obey. I let out a bitter chuckle, my mind flashing back to my past life. Back then, after marrying Ethan, I was never allowed to visit him at the base. Every time the unit held a family event, he refused to take me along, claiming that real men didn't need their wives hovering around them. Later, I learned the truth. Every officer brought their wife, even the highest-ranking leaders. The real reason Ethan never took me was because he was afraid of upsetting Lily. To him, I was an embarrassment. I wasn't as beautiful as Lily, and bringing me along wouldn't boost his image. Now, as I looked at him again, I no longer cared what he thought of me. I only wanted to end this as quickly as possible and put as much distance between us as I could. I forced a smile. An acceptance letter is far too important. Do you think I'd dare bring it out with me? I lowered my voice to sound accommodating. "I'll give it to you when you return. But for now, can I stay here with you for a while?" "Don't worry, I won't interfere with your training. I just want to walk around the base. I won't mention your name, and I won't embarrass you. Is that okay?" Ethan frowned, but didn't refuse. He made me promise again to hand over the letter when he came back, and I obediently nodded. Once he was gone and out of sight, I immediately got to work. I moved quietly, carefully navigating the base until I found Ethan's commanding officer. Without hesitation, I knocked on his office door. After introducing myself, I explained everything. Ethan's coercion, the stolen acceptance letter, and how his fiancée and her mother had cut off my family's ration stamps to force me into submission. The officer, a kind old man, listened intently. As I spoke, his expression darkened, and by the time I finished, his eyes were red with restrained anger. "I never imagined Ethan would be this kind of person," he muttered. "This is a serious breach of conduct. How can someone like him be trusted to lead men?" He slammed his fist on the desk. "I will deal with this personally." Then he turned his attention to Lily's mother. A village committee leader using her power to starve someone's family? Outrageous. This won't be overlooked. I handed over the pieces of the torn acceptance letter. "Can you check for fingerprints?" The results came back quickly, and they were exactly what I expected. To avoid alerting Ethan and Lily, I had the officer send the evidence directly to the mayor's home. At the same time, I called Sophia to warn her to expect the delivery and make sure her father saw it. By the time I stepped out of the office, night had fallen. Carefully avoiding Ethan, I made my way back home and slept soundly for the first time in a long while. The next morning, I was woken by the sound of a woman sobbing outside my house. When I opened the door, I found Lily standing there, her hair a mess, wailing as if her world had ended. "It was you, wasn't it, Emma?" she cried. "You did this. My mother was dismissed as village leader first thing this morning. You ruined everything." Her voice cracked as she screamed. "Why couldn't we talk about this? Why did you have to push us into a corner?" Behind her, Ethan stood with a stormy expression, his fists clenched at his sides. His usual smug arrogance had vanished, replaced by unfiltered rage. "You went to my superior, didn't you?" he growled. "I was questioned by my officer all night. I've been demoted 3 ranks. I'm no better than a common soldier now." He glared at me, his teeth grinding together. "I really underestimated you." "And what exactly do you gain from all this?" Ethan growled. "If you don't want me to break off the engagement, then you'd better come with me and explain everything to my superiors. Otherwise, I will never marry you." He grabbed my wrist forcefully, but I immediately slapped his hand away. Tilting my head up, I looked him straight in the eyes, my voice unwavering. "I've told you countless times I don't want to marry you." "I never did," I sneered. "I've known about you and Lily for a long time. Everything you've done for me was only ever to use me. Did you really think I was stupid?" I crossed my arms. "Your superior wouldn't have punished you without solid proof. Instead of admitting to your mistakes, you're trying to force me to fix them for you. But even if I did explain things, do you think he'd believe you? He'd only look down on you more." With that, I slammed the door in his face and started packing my belongings. Soon, I would leave for college, and this whole ordeal would finally be behind me. I had no interest in wasting another second on Ethan and Lily. But Ethan seemed to have lost his mind. Enraged, he grabbed a rock and shattered my window. "You think you can just say no?" he bellowed. "Your father begged me to marry you. Get him out here now." I froze at the sound of breaking glass. Before I could react, I saw my father slowly walking out of the house, his steps unsteady. Panic surged through me, and I quickly grabbed his sleeve. "Dad, please, I really don't want to marry him," I pleaded. "I'm begging you." My father gently patted my hand before turning to Ethan. Ethan stood there with his arms crossed, his smirk full of arrogance. "Look at your family's situation," he scoffed. "Your daughter marrying me would be the best thing that ever happened to her. What's wrong with listening to me? Not only can she not help me in my career, but now she's trying to ruin me. Tell me, old man, what should we do about this?" My father straightened his back under the morning sun, his shadow long and steady. Clearing his throat, he spoke with quiet dignity. "If you think marrying my daughter is too good for her," he said, "then I won't marry her off. My daughter will do whatever she wants. I thought she liked you, which is why I wanted her to marry you. But now I know that what she truly wants is to study. Even if I have to sell everything we own, I will make sure she gets her education." Ethan's arrogant expression froze completely. He blinked, then rubbed his ear as if he couldn't believe what he had just heard. "You must be out of your damn mind," he spat, his face flushing with rage. He rolled up his sleeves and lunged at my father. I instinctively threw myself in front of my dad, only to be punched straight to the ground. "Emma, you really want to do this?" Ethan snarled. "Fine, then I'll beat you both." Just as his fist was about to land again, a sharp voice cut through the air. "Take them away." Everyone's head snapped up. None of us had realized that someone had called the police. A group of officers marched forward, grabbing both Ethan and Lily. The officer in charge stepped forward, his gaze sharp. "The mayor called and informed us that there have been serious misconduct issues in this village. Lily White has been caught stealing and violating moral conduct, and Ethan Carter is guilty of the same. On top of that, they were found engaging in inappropriate behavior in the woods late at night. Both of them have been charged with public indecency and will be taken into custody." I stared in shock as Ethan and Lily were forcibly dragged away. Only then did I remember that in this era, public indecency was a serious crime. If the mayor personally named them as offenders, their punishment would be severe. Ethan and Lily were officially arrested and locked away. Meanwhile, I took my acceptance letter and went to college, finally free of them. My future was now wide open. After graduation, I chose to work in chemical research at the same military base where Ethan had once served. That was the last time I ever heard about him. Years later, I found out that Ethan had gotten into fights in prison and lost an eye. He had also broken his leg, which left him permanently disabled. After that, he finally learned to behave. As for Lily, her family helped her escape from prison once, but while trying to cross a river, the current was too strong. She drowned in the freezing waters, bringing her miserable life to an abrupt end. Their stories ended there. But my life had only just begun. To be reborn and live again, I was truly lucky. That's why I had to cherish every moment, not just for myself, but for the bright and prosperous future ahead. I was grateful to be alive under my country's red flag, stepping forward into a new life with no regrets.